Hello, welcome. My name is Tibet and I'd like to demonstrate the tVerb for the AES Student Design Competition. First of all, the chassis. In my abstract, I mentioned that it's made out of a dysfunctional headphone amp, and that's the casing and the housing of the tVerb, and all the processor and everything's inside it. And as you can see, it has a simple interface, just an input pad, a headphone volume, and a USB socket for user impulse responses. And I will quickly demonstrate how the tVerb sounds and functions. So let's start by turning it on by pressing the power button there. And I'll just give it a while to turn on. Obviously we have our little LED light there to indicate that it's been turned on. And we have, it functions with stereo line inputs and stereo line outputs. And I'm just giving it some keyboard sounds and we'll see how that functions. So let's hear the dry signal first. So that's our dry signal, and we will see what the tVerb does to it. Currently, the default impulse response is loaded, and because you've seen that we haven't plugged anything in, so there's no user impulse responses currently. So the processor has loaded in the default impulse response, and we're also sending it a mono signal, and it's converting it into a stereo output for the reverb. So let's see how it sounds like. So we've opened our wet channel from the tVerb, and we can more from the pad, or if you want less, to a point where it's kind of inaudible. So we'll just bring that up again. So just a small comparison. That's the dry signal, and now that's with the wet signal. And this is purely the signal coming in from the tVerb. And so that's the default impulse response, and that's how you would work with a default impulse response. So let's see how a user can put their own impulse responses in. First, I'll mute it so we don't hear any pops. So, as you've seen, there's a USB socket labeled user IR here, featuring our lovely handcrafted exterior design. So it's very simple. You'll get your USB and you'll have a WAV file that's 48K sample rate, and it's a stereo file, and you'll just get that, put that somewhere in your USB, and we'll plug that in, and we'll turn it on again. And again, I'll give it a second for it to open up. And I haven't put any limiting on what a user IR could be, like in terms of length. So you could kind of go crazy with the user impulse responses. I don't guarantee that you'll always get the best results, but I've kind of let that freedom to the user. So I'm not sure if you remember how the default impulse response sounds like, but this is just a random impulse response that I've given it. So again, starting with a dry signal. And that's our user impulse response. Again, that's just a wet channel. Now with the dry channel as well. And that's quite a simple way to put your own impulse response in. And I think that's the basics of the tVerb. And obviously it comes with a guide, so you can see how I've made everything from step 1 to the final step, and it's quite comprehensive. You could recreate the whole thing with your own desktop, hopefully. And thank you for your consideration.